High on a misty hilltop in Louisville, Kentucky, hidden by thick woods and time, stands Waverly Hills Sanatorium. From the outside it looks like an old abandoned building, windows shattered, vines creeping up its walls. But inside, the air feels heavy, as if the walls themselves are holding on to the cries of thousands who never left. The sanatorium opened its doors in 1910, during a time when tuberculosis, known as the White Plague, was claiming lives across the country. Waverly Hills was meant to be a place of healing. Perched away from the city, doctors believed fresh air and sunlight could save their patients. But as the death toll rose, that hope began to rot. There were no real cures. Patients were subjected to extreme treatments. Lungs were surgically collapsed, ribs removed, and some even had balloons inserted into their chests in desperate attempts to restore breathing. Many died during these painful procedures. It's believed that tens of thousands of people perished inside those walls. To hide the sheer number of deaths, the hospital built what's now known as the body chute, a long, dark tunnel stretching from the building to the base of the hill. Bodies were secretly lowered on gurneys to avoid alarming the still living patients. But those who walk that tunnel today swear they're not alone. Cold spots appear out of nowhere, whispers echo without a source, and some feel invisible hands brush against their arms. Then there's room 502. Legend says that in 1928, a nurse working there was found hanging from the light fixture. She had become pregnant by a doctor who refused to acknowledge the child. Humiliated and heartbroken, she ended her life in the very place where she helped others fight for theirs. Just a few years later, another nurse allegedly jumped from the window of room 502, her reasons lost to history. Since then, strange things happen in that room. Lights flicker, even though there's no power, shadows move along the walls, and some visitors report feeling sick the moment they step inside. Waverly's most famous ghost is Timmy, the spirit of a young boy who once roamed the halls. Visitors bring him toys, especially balls, which are often seen rolling across the floor, seemingly on their own. Some even claim to hear a child's giggle echoing in the distance. After the sanatorium closed in 1961, the building was briefly used as a nursing home, but reports of abuse and neglect led to its shutdown. Since then, Waverly Hills has stood mostly empty, except for ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and skeptics, who often leave as believers. People describe footsteps echoing when no one is there, doors slamming in empty hallways, and disembodied voices calling out their names. One visitor described seeing a figure in a white coat walk past a doorway, only to find the room completely empty. Another reported being scratched on the back after mocking the stories, leaving 3 fresh red marks that burned for hours. Despite countless paranormal investigations and endless stories from those who visited, one thing is certain: Waverly Hills is more than just an old building. It's a place that feels alive with memories of pain, fear, and untold secrets. And if you ever find yourself in room 502, don't stay too long. Some say the nurse still watches, waiting for someone to understand her story, or maybe join her. In the quiet town of Ararat, Victoria, Australia, there lies a massive complex that once housed over 1,000 souls tormented, not just by their minds, but perhaps by the very walls meant to protect them. This is the story of Ararat Lunatic Asylum, also known as Ararat. Opened in 1867, it operated for well over a century, becoming the largest mental institution in the Southern Hemisphere. But long after its doors closed, whispers of terror still echo through its endless corridors. In its prime, Ararat was a self-contained city. It had a bakery, gardens, a morgue, and even its own vineyards. But behind its high walls and neatly kept grounds were thousands of patients, some with legitimate mental illness, others simply deemed inconvenient by society. Women were institutionalized for things like depression, or even reading too much. Men were sent away for alcoholism, or simply for being difficult. The treatments were as brutal as the reasons people were admitted. Electroshock therapy was common. Lobotomies were performed with ice picks. Straitjackets and padded cells kept the screams silent. It's believed that over 13,000 people died within Ararat's walls. Some say their spirits never left. One of the most disturbing areas is the men's wing. Visitors have reported sudden nausea, dizziness, and the sensation of being watched. Tour guides, speak of a former patient named Old Margaret, who died alone in her room after decades of isolation. To this day, her room remains colder than the rest, and her name is often heard whispered when no one else is nearby. The morgue is another hot spot. Once a place of quiet, clinical routine, it now sends shivers down the spine of anyone who enters. Metal autopsy tables still sit in the room, and the body fridge stands like a mouth that never quite closes. Paranormal investigators have captured voices pleading for help, and guests claim to feel hands tugging at their clothes as if the dead are trying to stop them from leaving. Perhaps most chilling of all is the story of Nurse Carrie. According to local legend, she worked at Ararat for years, often pulling long shifts in the women's wing. One night, she vanished without a trace. Her body was never found. Some believe she had a breakdown and ended her own life within the building. Others whisper that she was silenced for discovering something she shouldn't have. Her ghost, they say, is still searching for peace, glimpsed often as a pale figure in a nurse's uniform, walking the halls at night. Tourists on ghost tours often leave shaken. One man fainted in the surgical theater. A woman felt her hand grasped tightly while walking alone through the West Wing, only to find no one there. And many have caught unexplained figures in photos, misty shapes, eyes glowing in the dark, faces in windows that should be empty. Despite being officially shut down in 1998, Ararat refuses to rest. It stands as a monument to suffering, misunderstood science, and the chilling silence that follows years of pain. Some believe the building itself is alive, feeding on energy and emotion, and giving back only fear in return. If you ever walk the halls of Ararat, listen closely. You may hear the distant echo of footsteps not your own, or the gentle hum of Nurse Carrie's lullaby, forever wandering in search of peace she was never granted. Tucked away in Spring City, Pennsylvania, hidden by trees and time, stands the crumbling remains of Pennhurst Asylum. What was once known as the Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic is now one of the most notoriously haunted places in America. Built in 1908, it was designed to house people with mental and physical disabilities, but over the decades, it became a house of horrors, marked by abuse, neglect, and unspeakable cruelty. Pennhurst began with good intentions, to provide care and structure for individuals who needed help, but it didn't take long for things to spiral. Overcrowding became a serious problem. Designed for just 500 residents, the population quickly grew to over 2,000. Staff were overwhelmed. Patients were left unattended, sometimes strapped to their beds or locked in cages. Children were often abandoned here, left to grow up in silence and fear. In the 1960s, a young reporter named Bill Boldini exposed the horrors of Pennhurst in a shocking news segment. Viewers watched in horror as children rocked back and forth in soiled clothing, adults screamed behind locked doors, and staff admitted they couldn't keep up. The footage was grainy, but the truth was crystal clear. Pennhurst had become a dumping ground for society's forgotten. It officially closed in 1987, after lawsuits and public outrage. But many say the energy of those who suffered there never truly left. The buildings stand rotting and silent, but visitors describe a place still very much alive in a different way. Doors slam on their own. Disembodied voices echo in empty halls. Wheelchairs roll across the floor without anyone touching them. Shadows move just out of the corner of your eye, and when you turn to look, there's nothing there. Or at least, nothing you can see. One of the most active spots is the Mayflower Building. Paranormal investigators have heard children crying, caught electronic voice phenomena saying "get out," and even captured screams echoing from locked rooms. Some visitors report being scratched or pushed by unseen hands. Others walk in feeling fine, only to be overwhelmed by sadness or dread without explanation. Then there's the tunnel system that connects the buildings originally built to move patients without being seen. These underground passages are pitch black, damp, and suffocating. Many who enter feel watched, followed, or touched. One story tells of a nurse who was attacked in the tunnels by a disturbed patient and never returned to work. Now some say she walks the tunnels in her old white uniform, appearing for just a second before vanishing into the dark. Another tale revolves around a young boy named Howie, believed to have died from neglect. He's said to appear near the dormitories, peeking around corners, or playing with a red rubber ball. Tourists have brought toys for him, some of which move on their own, or disappear entirely. His presence isn't threatening, but deeply sad, like a child, still waiting for someone to come back for him. Ghost tours and paranormal shows have all visited Pennhurst, and most leave with more questions than answers. People report equipment malfunctions, drained batteries, and strange lights floating down hallways. But what disturbs most is the overwhelming sense of pain that lingers, like the walls themselves remember every scream, every cry for help that went unanswered. Pennhurst isn't just haunted by ghosts, it's haunted by the truth, by the real suffering of thousands who were ignored, mistreated, and silenced. And perhaps that's what keeps the energy alive. If you ever step inside Pennhurst, be respectful. This isn't just a spooky location. It's a place where broken hearts and shattered minds were locked away and forgotten. Until now. Deep in the pine forests, just outside Berlin lies Beelitz-Heilstätten, a sprawling hospital complex once filled with the sounds of recovery and healing, but now, echoing with something much darker. Built in the late 1800s, it was originally a tuberculosis sanatorium, later serving as a military hospital during both world wars. Over a century of pain, death, and fear soaked into its walls, until the living moved out, and something else moved in. During World War I, a young soldier named Adolf Hitler was treated here after being wounded. Some say his dark ideas began to take shape while staring at the peeling walls of Beelitz. Later during World War II, it became a Nazi hospital, overflowing with wounded soldiers, amputations, and death. As the war ended, Soviet forces took over, and the hospital remained in use for decades, becoming known for its secretive treatments and restricted access. But in the 1990s, most of the complex was abandoned. Nature crept in, vines wrapped around the walls, and dust settled over rusted surgical tools and hospital beds left behind. What remained was a haunting shell, like time had simply stopped. But time wasn't the only thing that stayed. Visitors began reporting strange occurrences almost immediately. Doors slammed without wind. Footsteps echoed through the corridors when no one was there. Photographers exploring the ruins captured shadowy figures standing in windows, only to vanish when approached. The operating rooms, in particular, are said to carry a heavy oppressive energy. Some people feel nauseous the moment they enter. One of the most disturbing legends involves the Red Room, a tiled surgery space stained with rust that looks suspiciously like blood. Some believe experiments were conducted there during the Soviet era. Tourists report hearing low voices whispering in Russian, flickering lights despite no electricity, and tools rattling on trays without being touched. The most chilling story, however, comes from the more recent past. In 2008, a photographer lured a woman to the abandoned hospital and murdered her, bringing real-life horror back to a place already drenched in it. Since then, many say the energy of Beelitz has grown even darker. Visitors report sudden cold bursts, the feeling of being followed, and seeing a female figure with long hair walking silently through the ruins, only to disappear when approached. Some areas seem to resist visitors entirely. One hallway in particular is known to drive people out. Those who try to walk down it describe sudden panic, shortness of breath, and the overwhelming urge to flee. Others report feeling like they're being watched from every angle, though no one is ever seen. Despite the decay, Beelitz-Heilstätten continues to draw ghost hunters, urban explorers, and filmmakers. But not everyone makes it far. Equipment fails without reason. Cameras shut off, batteries drain, cameras shut off. It's as if something doesn't want to be seen, or perhaps wants to make itself known. Wandering those halls, it's easy to imagine the cries of wounded soldiers, the whispers of nurses, and the eerie silence that follows the end of life. The building stands as a monument, not just to war and illness, but to what happens when places are left to rot, while the pain they've witnessed lingers in the air. Beelitz-Heilstätten isn't just haunted by spirits, it's haunted by history, and sometimes that's even more terrifying. In the heart of Luzon, surrounded by thick jungle and long-forgotten runways, stands one of the most haunted places in the Philippines, Clark Air Base Hospital. Once a modern military medical center, operated by the United States during World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, it was a place of frantic energy, life-saving surgeries, and tragic death. But today, it's a shadow of what it once was, abandoned, decaying, and echoing with the voices of the past. The hospital served thousands of US and Filipino soldiers over the decades. During wartime, it was a hub of activity, stretchers wheeled in by the minute, blood staining the white floors, surgeons working around the clock under the harsh glow of overhead lights. Many soldiers died there, often in agony, far from home and family. It became a place where hope and horror existed side by side. But when the US left the base in the early 1990s, nature and silence took over. The hospital was left untouched, like time just stopped. Medical equipment still sits in corners, surgical lights dangle from the ceilings, and faded beds lie undisturbed. But visitors and locals soon realized that the building wasn't truly empty. Soldiers stationed at the base during its final years told stories of hearing footsteps in hallways where no one walked, of screams echoing through the night, and of ghostly apparitions appearing in rooms that were supposed to be deserted. Security guards reported seeing shadowy figures standing in doorways, only to vanish when approached. One of the most repeated encounters is with a headless apparition believed to be a fallen soldier. He's often seen in the surgical wing, wandering slowly as if searching for something or someone. Others have claimed to see bloodstains appear on walls and floors, only to vanish moments later. Some visitors hear faint whispers in Tagalog and English, unintelligible but always unsettling. The maternity ward carries its own sorrowful energy. Nurses have reported hearing the cries of infants echoing through the floor, even though no babies have been born there in decades. Some say they've seen a woman in a blood-soaked hospital gown standing at the end of the corridor, holding something invisible in her arms, rocking gently back and forth. Even the brave, paranormal investigators and ghost hunters leave Clark Air Base Hospital shaken. Thermal cameras pick up heat signatures that disappear when approached. EMF detectors spike uncontrollably. In one chilling case, a group reported being locked inside a room with no functioning door lock. They claimed they heard heavy boots walking just outside, pacing back and forth, even though no one else was in the building. Locals refuse to go near the hospital at night. Some say it's cursed. Others believe the souls trapped inside are simply confused, caught between this world and the next. The building has become a legend, a forbidden place, where every creak, shadow, and gust of wind feels like it carries a message from the other side. What makes Clark Air Base Hospital so terrifying isn't just the ghosts, it's the feeling. The moment you step inside, you feel it. The weight, the sorrow, the fear. As if the walls remember every scream, every last breath, every desperate plea for help, and maybe they do. Enter at your own risk. But don't be surprised if something follows you back out.